Good evening. You're watching The Big Story with Haryanto Diman. I'm Olivia Kuwait. Now, this is the second time tonight that we're connecting with you, so apologies for the technical difficulties.
In Parliament today, Deputy Prime Minister Heng Keat said the impact of the Covid-19 pandemic is expected to be more severe than SARS. The number of unemployed residents could potentially rise from around 73,000 in 2019 to above 100,000 in 2020.
There is now talk of a global lockdown generation, and fears that the youth of our time could have their skills, employability, and incomes permanently affected, even after the world recovers from the pandemic. We must work to prevent a COVID generation of workers and students in Singapore.
DPM Heng highlighted that people and jobs are at the centre of Singapore's four budgets, where close to 80% of the money is dedicated to. The Job Support Scheme will provide $23.5 billion to support 1.9 million jobs over 10 months, of which two-thirds are in small and medium enterprises.
But despite our best efforts, we cannot possibly save every job. Many sectors were already facing disruptions before COVID-19. For workers who are displaced, you have our assurance that if you make the effort, our tripartite partners will support you to tide through this difficulty. The COVID-19 situation is a mighty storm that has damaged sails and forced ships around the world to go into harbour. While waiting for the storm to subside, we must make the best use of this downtime to build new strengths and capabilities. Let us take this rare chance to repair, upgrade our ship, and install new instruments, reorientate our mental compass, and strengthen our sailors so that when the fair wind comes, we will sail out faster and further than ever before. This is what our four budgets enable us to do. Let us make the best use of this.
Efforts are underway to allow construction activities to resume safely and quickly. Second Minister for National Development Desmond Lee said batches of workers living in dormitories are being cleared to ensure they are well and able to return to work. 60 dormitories have been cleared this week. Another 111 are due to be cleared in the coming weeks.
We will provide more regular updates to our industry, including a rolling forecast of the dormitory clearance schedule to help employers and their clients plan ahead. For workers living in the community, we have also set aside testing capacity to test construction workers regularly to ensure their health and safety and that of the wider community.
Meanwhile, Nee Soon GRC MP Louis Ng called for government-paid COVID-19 related childcare leave. This will help parents whose children need to stay home due to COVID-19 issues. Mr. Ng said it can be introduced at least till the end of Phase 2.
So this leave is critical for those who are unable to work from home. This includes parents working in essential services who perform a duty for our nation, who keep us safe. We need to make sure that they are looked after too.
Companies should also do their part to help workers. Minister of State for Manpower Zakir Mohammed said employers can send their staff for subsidized training programs to take on new or redesigned job roles. The government provides up to 90% salary support and course fee subsidies for such programs.
A bill that will legally require landlords of commercial, industrial and office properties to shoulder the rental burden is also expected to be passed in Parliament today.
Well, there's so much to discuss, so let's bring in the Straits Times news editor, Zakir Hussain, to help us break it all down. Thanks for staying with us, Zakir. Back to DPM Heng's speech. Did he bring up anything new today?
I think he outlined the broad philosophy and thinking behind these four budgets. Right, we're Singapore spending close to 100 billion on these initiatives, and I think as we saw in the clip earlier, to avert a lockdown generation and the possibility that unemployment could cross 100,000. And so I think that the need to ensure that there are enough training spaces and opportunities for up to 100,000 school leavers or graduates this year, but also I think mature and middle-aged workers, so that they use this time to pick up new skills, reorientate themselves to other industries, convert to do other forms of work, so that when the economy and things pick up, they're in the best position to recover. And I think this was what DPM strongly alluded to as kind of Singapore's strategy to ride through the pandemic. There's an emerging Stronger Together task force that's been set up. And I think it's meant to look at ways and opportunities to prepare people for this future. And I think another key point that he reiterated was the value we have of past reserves. I think the government's, drawing down up to over 52 billion from past reserves. And this was only possible because of fiscal prudence and sustainable policies where, you save for the future, but at the same time, you shouldn't, leave future generations to pay off the current generation's debts. And I think in his speech, DPM did explain why, even though borrowing costs may be low, the government was not borrowing to fund the current measures.
Right, Zakir, 2 days of debate on the Fortitude Budget. What points stood out for you?
I think one key challenge was, one key point was a lot of the stories these MPs shared about, I think two things. One was the value of essential workers and essential work. When a lot of us are working from home, close to 20% of the workforce doing essential services, whether in maintenance or in cleaning and other essential services, were actually placing themselves at higher risk. And I think several MPs questioned whether there is a need for us to relook how we value these workers. Many of them are on the front line, even putting their lives at risk in this battle against COVID-19. The second point was, I think, how many things we didn't think possible have now suddenly become possible. For the longest time, hawkers were resistant to go digital, to accept cashless payments, and so on. I think when business is down and they're forced to innovate and find new ways to keep up, you see quite a lot of people adopting new methods. Same thing with telecommuting or working from home. Many employers and firms, and even workers who were resistant previously to telecommuting, have had to adapt and are in fact adapting very well. So much so that I think at least a couple of MPs and one MP today suggested, why not we move to a 4-day work week, right? Where the 5th day could be spent working from home or doing flexi work. And I think that's very much possible.
Let's move away from what was discussed in the last 2 days. Now, the COVID-19 Multi-Ministry Task Force has said that if the number of community cases remains low and stable, phase 2 of Singapore's reopening could start in June. So does that mean the general election could be held in July?
Possibly. I think the steps are already in place. I don't think we need to wait for an entirety of phase 2 to have an election. This will be a very different election. Don't forget that even in phase 2, some dining out will be allowed and so on, but you're not going to see coffee shops and wet markets suddenly, full, and your traditional campaign rallies and all will likely not be there. But I think we're very likely looking at a July election, and I think, even some of the rallying points that DPM Heng made in his speech, and I think some of the comments made by the MPs, this may well be the last parliament sitting before the election.
Wow, so that was news editor at the Straits Times, Zakir Hussain. Thank you so much. And if what you said is true, then I suppose we'll be checking in with you again very shortly.
The Health Ministry confirmed 11 new COVID-19 cases in the community today. 6 are Singaporeans or permanent residents, while 5 are work pass holders.
Of these 11 cases, 6 are linked to previously confirmed cases and had already been placed on quarantine. 1 is linked to a dormitory cluster. Investigations are ongoing for the remaining 4.
Migrant workers living in dormitories make up the remaining cases. There are 261 new cases today, and this lower number is partly due to fewer swab tests being conducted.
Today's count brings the total cases in Singapore to 37,183. More details will be released later.
We're now joined by infectious diseases physician Dr Leong Hoe Nam from the Rophi Clinic at Mount Elizabeth Novena. Doctor, all of the 15 community cases reported yesterday were asymptomatic. It's not clear if any of today's community cases are as well. Are you concerned about this growing number, or can we look at it as a promising sign that identifying asymptomatic cases indicates that our current contact tracing system is working?
I'm actually positive about it. The reason is this: the more you do, the more you test, the more you'll find them. And you saw the exasperation in Wuhan in China when they went on to test almost 10 million people almost over a 2-week period. And there they found 300 cases out of almost 10 million people. So the rule is this: the more you test, the more you find. And the fact that we are finding them tells me that the government of Singapore is really actively trying to find all the cases and weed them out. Now, the question then is, do asymptomatic cases, do they cause problems? They do. Asymptomatic cases are known to cause transmissions. In fact, they can actually trigger off a super spreading event. So the more we find them, the more we control the close contacts, the better they will be. The good news is, having found them, we will prevent further spread. The second good news is that these people are asymptomatic. They're less likely to have severe form of illness, which means they're going to survive through without any complications, without the need of oxygen or even intensive care. So these guys are going to do well. The more we find them, the more we secure Singapore, the more Singapore is safe.
Good point there, Dr. Leong. So are we getting closer to finding sources of unlinked cases as well then, do you think?
No, I don't think we are, for a few reasons. Number one, we need a way of actually tracking the individuals better. You look at how Vietnam did it, you look at how Korea and Taiwan did it, they did geolocationing. And when we try to use it with a Trace Together app, we're hit together with a very poor uptake, insufficient uptake to actually catch all the individuals who are infected. If we really want to make a dent into COVID-19, we have to use technology on our side, and they're talking about a bracelet or something which people can track with by the government in terms of their contacts, not their locations, but in terms of contract. So this will make a big difference, but until that is rolled out, I think our efforts are very much manual driven, and this will not be ideal.
Doctor, just quite recently, we've seen the number of community cases hovering at a very low number of about 5. But yesterday, we saw a spike to over 10 at 15, and today we are seeing at 11. Do you think the jump in community cases is a direct result of phase 1 starting on Monday?
No, we haven't seen phase 1 results yet. At the earliest, we only see phase 1 results after Tuesday next week. So we're talking about at least 7 days after the introduction of phase 1. I think we'll get to see the full effect of phase 1 only about 10 to 14 days after its introduction. So what we are getting off is a taste of what it was before phase 1. There is a lag time, and this lag time is due to the incubation period of the virus. The incubation period is about up to 14 days. In general, we think it's about 5 days. As of now, there's probably just one incubation cycle. Give it more time, it will surface. Singapore, be prepared for more and more numbers as phase 1 rises and continues on. But I will not be too concerned about the numbers of phase 1. It is either these numbers or the economy tanking. I will accept and tolerate a certain number of small cases every day. What's important is the number who are sick, the number who requires good medical care, the number who requires ICU or what we call critical care. If the numbers remain very small or no increase at all, then we got it at the right balance. Having a small number, but with the economy going, and having no one fall seriously ill, which means we save lives, we keep Singapore going.
Dr. Leong, do you see potential major sources of infections during phase 1 that could cause a second wave? Public transport and supermarkets have been identified as areas of concern, for example, which have seen reduced safe distancing recently.
Absolutely. Anywhere where there's a groupings of people, even with their masks on, will be a potential site. Indeed, public transport, be it the MRT or the buses, or even the bus stops. And of course, Singaporeans are queuing up for their food. As they queue up for their food, even 1 meter distance is not very effective. Now, a study has been published recently in Lancet, a very prestigious medical journal. It says 1 meter helps. 2 meters is even better. So I'll use this opportunity to remind everyone, if you can keep up to 2 meters, that's even better. If you're down to 1 meter or less, don't talk, shut the mouth, just keep your hands to yourself, don't touch anything, complete the journey and move on. You see, if all of us were to work together with the mask on, with our hands to ourselves, then we can actually control COVID and let the economy move on. Singapore, we can do this as a country, united as one.
And that's a great way to end the interview. Dr. Leong, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us. We've been speaking to infectious diseases physician Dr. Leong Hoe Nam from the Rophi Clinic.
In other news, Singapore is building up its vaccine manufacturing capacity, with Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong saying today that Singapore intends to offer fill and finish contract manufacturing services to vaccine developers. In the pharmaceutical industry, contract development and manufacturing organizations work on a contractual basis to fulfill services like the manufacture of drugs or vaccines. PM Lee added this should help ramp up the production process and ensure high standards of safety and quality in the manufacturing process.
Meanwhile, Singapore's retail sales in April suffered their biggest drop since 1985 when records began as circuit breaker measures kicked in. According to data released by the Department of Statistics today, takings at the till plunged by 40.5% year-on-year. This was a much steeper fall than the 13.3% decline in March and marks 15 straight months that retail sales have dropped.
Staff of elder care services in operation, including those at daycare centres, will be progressively tested for the coronavirus this month. Announcing this new group for surveillance testing in Parliament today, Senior Minister of State for Health Amy Khor said COVID-19 swab testing complements the existing precautionary measures in place for elder care services, like strict infection control, safe distancing and visitor restrictions.
And a wearable device for contact tracing may be issued to Singaporeans to help curb the COVID-19 spread. Minister in charge of the Smart Nation Initiative, Vivian Balakrishnan, explained that technical difficulties have prevented the Trace Together app from working well on iPhones, so the app hasn't been made compulsory. If the proposed wearable device works well, the government may distribute it to everyone in Singapore, which Dr. Balakrishnan said will be more inclusive and ensure all Singaporeans will be protected. Let's now go to Dylan Ang for the top headlines around the world.
Thanks, guys. Chinese and Irish researchers found coronavirus patients with high blood pressure are twice as likely to die as those without the condition. The risk is said to double when patients stop taking blood pressure medication while warded. Britain said yesterday that nearly 30,000 coronavirus tests that it sent to the US for processing came back void. The admission comes as the UK government faces criticism from a watchdog over incomplete test data, pressure over turnaround times for test results, and teething issues with a new test and trace program. A spokesperson for Prime Minister Boris Johnson said that operational issues in the UK's lab network led to 67,000 tests being sent to the States for processing. In New Zealand, leaders rejected calls by businesses to restart flights to Australia as soon as the 1st of July, saying that it was too early to do so. The travel bubble between the two nations was proposed by a business lobby group but was turned down by the Foreign Minister. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said that September was a more realistic date for the resumption of flights. And finally, Fiji has declared itself coronavirus-free after the island nation's last known infected patient was given the all-clear. Fiji has enjoyed tremendous success against the virus, with just 18 cases among its close to 900,000 population. That's all we have for our global updates. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Dylan. Now, Pulau Ubin is a popular weekend spot for Singaporeans to go hiking and cycling, but the island has seen very few visitors in the past few months since the coronavirus outbreak. And since many of the island's 40 residents rely on tourism for income, they've been hit hard by the recent circuit breaker.
Fortunately, they've been getting help from the National Parks Board's Community Liaison Team. Our colleague multimedia journalist Renee Poe visited the island recently to see how the residents are faring during this difficult period.
54-year-old bicycle shop operator Yeo Chong Huat has lived on Pulau Ubin his whole life. Like other Singaporeans on the mainland, life has changed for island residents like him during the past 2 months of the circuit breaker.
本来是游客很多，按摩洋人啊，来这个岛坐脚车、骑脚车，改变很厉害啊，都没有人来啊，没有生意做。现在100块都没有啊，没有人来，你看很近。
没有收入啦，好像没有人来拜神了。我是卖一点香烛过日子这样啦，很难哦，就是很辛苦咯。有时有自己的儿女啊、孩子啊，他们买一点过来给我们过活了这样。
While Madam Ong's family members send over essential items, other residents normally take a bumboat to the mainland to shop for groceries. These bumboats used to run at a maximum capacity of 12 people at a flat rate of $36. Now that social distancing measures are in place, only 9 people are allowed on board. This means that each person has to pay an average of $4 per trip, $1 more than before. And with a drop in visitors to the island, they could wait a long time for the boats to be filled up.
我们本岛人啊，出境啊是不可以的，一直包船。他们偶尔他们来这里玩的人啊，偶船就可以。我们住这里的人啊，很少了。
To ease transport costs, the NParks Community Liaison Team has been providing free boat rides to and from the island since April. The boats run 3 times a day, every Wednesday and Saturday.
好了，方便啊，不然你没有这个船安排啊，又等这个船啊，等很久啊，1、2、3个小时啊。
The Community Liaison Team also distributed masks to residents and does regular house calls to ensure that they are coping well.
During the initial stage, where most of the villagers are still trying to get used to the safe distancing and circuit breaker measures. So constantly we will have to actually remind them that they need to put on their masks when they have engagement with the visitors. At the jetty, we actually have 1 meter distance markers for visitors when they are waiting for the boat.
Wheelchair-bound villager Mr. Lan Long Ji had his right leg amputated in March after an accident at home.
从这边推下去，很吃力的，路不平，这是公园界跟义工的人帮忙咯。没有我要去门诊的时候又很难了，你这边下船最麻烦了，它不是平这样下去的，一个一个的楼梯很危险。
We collaborated with the fund members from Accessible Ubin to facilitate the use of a ramp to transport the villager to and fro the bumboat and the jetty.
我很感谢他们的公园区的人，没有我都不能回来嘛。
我不能做的东西，他们都帮忙做。啊，好像我们去申请那个老人卡什么不会，他们 NParks 也是会帮我去做好来。 我的女儿她带那种红十字会的人来检查身体，她也有买一个量血压的啊，叫NParks拿来给她用。
What motivates us and giving us the sense of satisfaction in our work is villagers are appreciative of what we have done for them, And this is something that is very genuine for the team.
The once bustling Pulau Ubin is now mostly quiet with only the sounds of wildlife. With a gradual exit from the circuit breaker, residents on the island also hope that life can slowly get back to normal and that visitors will return.
Let's go back to Dylan for Also in the News.
Singapore's Marina Bay Sands casino is being probed by both Singapore and United States authorities. The US Department of Justice has issued a subpoena as it looked into whether anti-money laundering regulations were breached when MBS handled the accounts of its top gamblers. The casino also faces a probe by the Casino Regulatory Authority in Singapore into its money transfer policies. The investigation is ongoing. Australian authorities are taking legal action to try to stop a Black Lives Matter protest scheduled for tomorrow in Sydney, citing coronavirus concerns. New South Wales Police had initially approved of the protest on the understanding that there will be fewer than 500 participants, but reversed their decision after Prime Minister Scott Morrison urged the public to not attend group gatherings in major cities. The New South Wales Supreme Court will hear the matter today. The US Transportation Department is set to issue a revised order in the coming days that will allow some Chinese passenger airline flights to continue in response to China's announcement that it will ease travel restrictions. Yesterday, China said it will allow more foreign carriers and ease coronavirus restrictions, shortly after Washington said it planned to bar Chinese airlines from June 16. And finally, a US warship sailed through the sensitive Taiwan Strait on the same day as the 31st anniversary of the Tiananmen incident yesterday. China considers Taiwan its territory and has been angered by the Trump administration's increased support for the self-ruled island. That was also in the news. I'm Dylan Ang.
Thanks so much, Dylan. And those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Olivia Quay. Have a good weekend and we'll see you next week.